Phil from Worcester says, you have the ability to travel back in time to any point in the last century. Which band would you go and see, and where and when? Right. I'd go back to New York at around about 75 to 77. I would have loved to have been a young fella, 75, 77 in New York. Mainly to see Ramones when they were just learning how to play, learning, how to just be in front of people. These misfits that were never meant to be in a band, just being on stage in front of you and being faster and shorter songs than any other band you've ever seen. So you'd have no reference point. So it would just be the brand new thing. And most people didn't like it. Obviously, you wouldn't like it. It was so very, very new. People probably didn't like the taste of beer when they first fucking had it. No, they probably did. But yeah, I would have been there because also there was so many bands going through New York. It was when, Iggy and the Stooges were still playing there. Alice Cooper was still doing it. And Dead Boys are coming up. But I remember seeing this poster for Aerosmith. And it was Aerosmith and... No, it wasn't. It was actually Mott the Hoople with Aerosmith and New York Dolls. And I just thought, that is a bill. Mott the Hoople, Aerosmith, New York Dolls. That would have been heaven to me. And also being 75, 77, you would have saw Kiss come up. The Dolls were still around. So yeah, New York 75 to 77. That's definitely where I would go. And they would be the bands. I fucking love New York in the 70s. There's something about it that's just grubby and perfect. You know that at the time, it wouldn't have seemed anything. It wouldn't have seemed special. It is on hindsight. So careful what you're doing now by saying, if you're ever thinking that what you're doing is worthless, hindsight could give it an entirely different value, because it does. That's what history does. Right. Nico from Italy. Hello, Nico from Italy. Would you mind telling us the tale of Debbie the MySpace girl? Oh, Phil. I knew this was coming. Right. I've got no shame. I've got no shame. I've got nothing to hide. And I can't lie because I can't remember anything. So it gives me this inability to restrict myself from shaming myself. And I'm going to shame myself outrageously right now. Debbie the MySpace girl. When I first got on MySpace, I had no idea it even existed. I think I'd been living in America or something, but I'd been living in a cloud of drugs and alcohol. And I came back to Britain and someone had set up a MySpace page for me. And I thought, this is interesting. Now, the whole concept was new. So I was just looking through to see if there was any pretty girls. Oh, God, this is all going to come off really bad. You wouldn't do it now. But back then, you were just looking through to see if there's any pretty girls. And then you were saying, do you fancy meeting up? And you would. You'd meet up with girls. And I had a lot of fun. And I hope so did they, because of MySpace. And then a girl called Debbie cropped up. Now, Debbie had a picture of herself. And she was nice looking, but not like, outrageous looking. Nothing that would trigger off the bells and red flags. And she had a Dolly Parton accent. I'd spoken to her on the phone. She had a Dolly Parton accent. Boom. I mean, hook, line, sinker. And she had a dad who was a musician, which kind of tallied up. I'd looked him up online, and it all seemed pretty kosher. It was just this girl that was just a fan of the Wildhearts. Great news. I was single at the time, so I thought, great. We'd been talking a lot on the phone. I figured, get you over. We're going to have to meet at some point. So I bought her a ticket, and she came over, and I was rehearsing with the band. It was Scott's first gig, and it was a headline gig in Birmingham. And it was my birthday, I think it was. Anyway, I excused myself from the rehearsals and went to the airport to pick Debbie up. I got a call over the tonight to come to the security because someone was trying to get into the country without a passport. I'm like, well, what's that got to do with me? She said, well, she reckons that she's staying with you and you've got to vouch for her. I'm like, there's a story behind this. She's probably lost her passport in the airport. I'll find out when I see her. But I'm just so looking forward to seeing this girl. She's probably fucking watching this. In which case, tut, bad on you. But anyway, I said, yes, she's staying with me. I will take full responsibility for everything. So I'm standing there waiting for her, and everybody's come through. Everybody. I'm still waiting for Debbie, who I'm presuming is still in security. And I'm standing there, and this, bless her, old lady comes up, and it's going, starts pulling my arm. And I'm just going like, oh, sorry, but I'm just waiting for someone. Is there anything I can do? Can I help? And she opened her mouth, and it was fucking Debbie's voice came from this old lady that barely had any teeth or hair, and obviously looked nothing like the girl that had been sending me. And she's been sending me a lot of pictures, some of them quite racy. So how the fuck she got all these pictures of this girl, I do not know. But it was obviously not the girl that I'd been conversing with for about 6 months. And I was just like, fuck, what do I do? Again, one of those points where there's no reference point. What do I do in this situation? No one had ever been in a situation like that. It was a long time before catfish or any of this sort of stuff. I didn't think that people could actually be as blatantly dishonest as to pretend there was someone and then turn up and expect you to believe that this person was the person that they obviously weren't. Anyway, she came to the gig and she had no money. We had to buy her clothes, buy her drinks, buy her food. We did the drink, and because I'm such a fucking soft touch, everyone was just saying, get her on the fucking next plane, get rid of her. And I'm like, I can't do that. She's got no passport. She doesn't know where she's going. There's obviously something wrong with her somewhere. So she came back to my house in Newcastle and she stayed there. And it was very evident after a couple of days, she didn't want to leave. And unless I involved the authorities, she wasn't going to leave. And I was going to have to manhandle her, which I was never going to do. I was brought up in a house full of domestic violence, and being, physical with a woman, not in my nature. But also brought in the house of domestic violence was my mum. So I said, Mum, can you just come and get rid of this fucking woman? And my mum thought nothing of picking her up by her bony little arms, sticking her in a taxi and getting her off to Newcastle Airport. And me and my mum took her to Newcastle Airport and waited by the fucking desk until she got on the plane and left the country. That was what I thought was the end of it. And then I got home and her mum had got my phone number and called up and said I was in trouble with the authorities because she was going to get tested, and if she was pregnant, I was going to have to pay through the nose, because this is the American judicial system, which is never ever cheap, I gather. Fortunately, I hadn't laid even eyes on her, let alone anything else. I was just, oh my God, this is a fucking terrible situation. Definitely didn't go anywhere near anything that was going to make anyone pregnant. And so escaped a bullet there. And then I had to do the decent thing, which she had obviously never done. And I had to find the woman who she'd been pretending to be. And I fucking scoured the fucking internet, little clues here and there, and I found her. Now, I'm good with the internet. If I like a band, I'll find merchandise for that band, even if it doesn't exist. And I found this girl. I got in touch with her. She was engaged to be married, and I said, look, someone's assumed your identity. You might want to report it to the police. And she was like, oh, thank you, this is terrible. And it was just so weird to got really into this idea of this girl. And then I'm talking to her and she has no idea who I am. It was the last date that I ever went on via the internet. Never joined a dating service because of that. Could do with one now, actually, but yeah, still put off by the fact that people can and do claim to be who they're not on that ridiculous thing we call the internet. But I remember coming back from the airport and trying to describe this to the band. I've just picked up the girl. Oh yeah, how is it? Well, it's not the girl. And this really old version of the girl turned up that looks nothing like her. And they found it as funny as I would have done. What a twat. So there, that's the warning is don't believe that people are too good to be true, because people tend not to be too good to be true and very rarely good enough to even fucking warrant your patronage. So yeah, careful out there. Fuck me, that was a weird one. But I found out later that she'd adopted another personality and was getting in touch with people that I knew, people in bands. And they were saying, no, I've got this weird girl. She's from this part of the woods that girl's from. She says she's got a famous dad, blah, blah, blah. And it's a different picture, but the handwriting was the same. Luckily, she had some grammatical problems. And it was evident that it was the same girl that was going to try and palm off the same thing for other people. What did she think was going to happen the next time she flew over to see someone? Or was she just into the idea of fucking with people because someone had maybe fucked with her in the past? I don't know. People are a fucking weird bunch. Anyway, I doubt you've got a story quite as cringe as that. It's a question on the C's, pronounced the keys. I'm so glad you told me that. But the keys say, regarding 555, definitely features lots of your top work. Thank you, the keys. I think so too. Can we talk about writing and recording Deep in the Arms of Morpheus? It's without a doubt one of your best, most classic Wildheart style songs ever. I think I read years ago that you thought very little of it and considered it cheesy. Is this still the case? Have you grown to like it more? The build-up section with the strings and the bass line is awesome. I really should listen to my stuff. Then into the drum break and riffy bit of pure classic Wildhearts. Well, this song is the first song I ever wrote with the Wildhearts. Well, the first song I ever wrote with the Wildhearts when I decided we weren't going to try and be Jason the Scorchers. Because the first music that the Wildhearts did was a cross between Jason the Scorchers and Cheap Trick. It was rock and roll. And I loved it, but I realised that there's a lot of stuff that I'm into that goes a little bit here and there. I was into Queen, it was, early Metallica was like longer songs, and then, once I got into Cardiacs, I'm like, I can't just stick with formulaic arrangements. So I wrote this song, and it was funny. Dante was talking the other day. Dante Benuto from the record label was here. We were talking about, he's still got a recording of me playing that in my bedroom from fucking God knows when, late 80s or something. But it's one of them songs that when we started going into this new kind of style of music I wanted to do, that one just wasn't as good, or it just didn't seem the same standard as a lot of the songs I was writing. I don't know why I dropped it. I like that song. I don't know, it was a good tune. But I think I just thought it was a little bit naff until we recorded it. Then I realised it was really good. I have no idea what it goes like though. I might get down in my sleep, and I know it's got that. But all of these bits that you talk about, see, I used to be able to listen to my stuff when I got really drunk, and every now and again I'd have a morning drink, and by the afternoon I'm steaming, and I'd get all my vinyl out and I put them all on the floor, and I go, ooh, look shiny, and I'd start playing them all and drinking, and nowadays I don't get drunk. I don't drink anything near enough to listen to my own records. And I tried to the other day. I had a couple of glasses of wine, and I tried to put it out. I just couldn't get into it. So I can't listen to my stuff. So all of the stuff that you talk about being in the middle of that song, I trust that you are right and that it is good. Because we had Rich playing drums, CG on guitar, John Poole on bass. So it was a Wildhearts recording, technically. So I know it's good, I know it's played well, I know it's probably interesting, but I'd have to go and listen to it with the strings and the bass and all them things that you say. Absolutely no interest in listening to my stuff. It's embarrassing, really. I mean, it probably people think I'm trying to be cool, but I actually feel a bit embarrassed by it because I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm probably the only one within the Wildhearts community. There's no idea what you're fucking talking about when you talk about the songs. Phil, and not producer Phil, was it true you used to work for Kerrang reviewing video nasties in the 80s? If so, what was that like? Wow. Yes. When I first moved to London, I was just trying to find jobs, as you do. I signed off the door as soon as I could and said, I'm never, ever going to darken your door again. And I didn't. But I did get loads and loads of little side jobs. One of them was writing for Kerrang. Now, I love horror movies and I love film reviews, so I thought, well, I can do that. I don't want to go and review bands because I don't want to criticise what other bands are doing. It's stuff that I don't like that someone else is in love with. But I do like movies, and no one was really doing movie reviews. I think it was a few, but they were reviewing everything. And I thought, well, what if I just review horror movies? I was trading movies at the time. So I had a load of illegal copies of movies that I could review under the name Lex Pathos, which is a fucking pretty good name, I thought. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it got to a point where the band were just too busy and I couldn't keep it up. But I really, really enjoyed doing it. And I still would love to do video reviews, film reviews. I always like the idea of writing a book of film reviews, but I'm not sure that there's enough. Maybe, maybe tell me if you would buy it. But I'm not sure there's enough interest in books on films anymore when people can just go online, IMDb, and find out about them. But yeah, it was one of my favourite jobs of all time, and that includes music. What was it like in the 80s in Kerrang? Fuck me, it was so great. I moved as a young lad to London, and one of the things that I wanted to find out was what was Kerrang all about. And one of the first ports of call I made was to the Kerrang offices, where at the time you could just walk in the doors. So I walked in the doors and I went, "Hey, I'm Ginger. I'm in a band called the Wildhearts, and you're going to write about us." And as it was back then, there was like two or three of the writers that had been following since from the 80s. And even before that, it was sounds and stuff like Jeff Barton and people like that. That just instantly went, "Great, you're coming to the pub with us." And we went and we got steaming drunk, which they did pretty much every day. So there'd be the morning writing session, and then there'd be the pub, and then there'd be afternoon writing session. And the afternoon writing session was all the stuff that I was obviously, unbeknown to me, everyone was drunk when they were writing it, but that was always my favourite writing in Kerrang, was the stuff that was just out there. I got to instantly be friends with some of my oldest friends now: Mick Wall, Crusher Jewel, Dante Benuto, Jeff Barton, Neil Jeffries, Ray Zell. Amazing people. There was more stars in this fucking lineup than any other bands in London, and they all lived like proper rock stars. And I'd be hanging out with bands and drinking them all under the table. You couldn't drink Kerrang under the table. They did the under table drinking, and they would relish in the fact that they would take bands to the pub and get them rat-arsed, and then they go back to work and watch them fucking crying on the floor. Kerrang prided themselves on being able to outdrink any musicians that used to come in there with the balls in the hand, and fucking brilliant. And they had a thing called View from the Bar, which is all the tales of the journalists going out to. You had loads of leagues. You had a gig, then a league. So you go to a gig that you have a band you had no interest whatsoever with, knowing there'd be a party afterwards. And that's why you'd keep meeting up with all these Kerrang journalists. And then they go back and try and write about what happened last night, and it was View from the Bar. You would never do that. There's not enough people going out and getting pissed these days. But View from the Bar, and they always refer to this thing as the golden optics. And I just thought, well, what the fuck's that? Well, in the office, there was a big rack with bottles of booze. And so they come back from the pub and keep drinking. So you're talking about a session that started pretty much midday, went on through the afternoon, and then they go for a drink, and then go to see a band, and then there'd be a league, and that was all the fucking time. Jesus, my liver deserves a medal. But yeah, all of these guys, pretty much all of these guys, apart from a couple of people, they all survived. They're all, see them all now, and they've still got the fucking stories, and, no regrets, not a regret between them. And the beauty of it is, I'm now working with Dante Benuto, who's one of the first people I met, whose writing I've always loved. And I have this fucking dream of doing this thing in December, and it's going to be, not acoustic. I shouldn't really say it, but I'm going to. I don't want it to be acoustic, but it will be, showcasing the harmonies. So it's not just going to be tons of volume and you can't fucking hear anything but drums. It's going to be spared down, and it's going to be in old theatres, and you're all going to get to sit down. Hopefully there's going to be like 2 sets, first set, intermission, where we'll go on the bar and meet everyone, and then the second set when everyone's a bit more squiffy. And I like the idea of that. And one of the reasons why I like the idea of that is because I want to have a tour programme. Now, back in the day, a lot of you probably don't remember, but back in the day, there was tour programs. You go to a gig and you get this thing that you could take home, this souvenir magazine kind of thing. And I like the idea of going to all my favourite Kerrang journalists and cartoonists and people like that and asking them all to write about the Wildhearts. We did something similar about 2004, and that was great. I loved that. And the thing is, with tour programs, you make just about enough money to pay for the tour program, the manufacturing of the tour program, and pay for the writers and stuff. But it doesn't matter, because it's one of those things where they're just such a cool idea. I want to bring them back. I don't know if this is going to happen, and I don't know if the tour in December is going to happen, but I've got a funny feeling that it is. because I really wanted to. And when I really want something, I tend to get it, for better or for worse. But yeah, I'd like to have all of these Kerrang writers feature in this tour program. Now, this is another big long one. His last question is from Justin Beatty, and I read this earlier on, and it said, I met you at Phoenix Festival in '96, asked for an autograph, which you gladly signed, but you stole my pen because you thought you could write a good song with it. Photo attached. Yeah, there's me with my skinhead. Can you remember which songs the pen went on to create? Obviously, Justin, no. There's been a few pens under the bridge since then, and I don't remember your pen, but I will guarantee that it did write something. And if it was, what did you say, it was 1996, I'd say it probably went on to write some of the Endless Nameless stuff. I'll say that to make you feel better, but probably not. Fucking pens. But I remember you, and you were very nice, as are all of you motherfuckers. And thank you so much for tuning in again. This has been a fun one. I'm in a fucking mad frame of mind. My head's all over the place. There's lots going on, but this is just a lovely place. It's my happy place, my peaceful place, and I fucking love doing them. Thank you to producer Phil for helping me with another one of these things. God bless you all, and I'll see you next Friday. Have a good time. Don't be cunts.